Hello and welcome back to episode 2 of the Living Room Lecture Series. I'm your host Tyler, and as always, I'm joined here by the wonderful Mackenzie. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Tyler. Especially because I have a bowl of popcorn.
All right, perfect. That's what I like to hear. Mackenzie, who's your favorite hijacker?
Oh,
Do you have a favorite hijacker?
no, I don't.
Well, I don't either. Today on our lecture series, we will be talking about Norjack. Do you mind?
Sorry.
A hijacking that happened on Thanksgiving Eve in 1971. Mackenzie, are you ready?
I'm ready.
This is your favorite hijacker's favorite hijacker. On December 13th, 1903, Orville Wright became the first person to ever fly a plane, taking him and his brother's invention, the Wright Flyer, on a 12-second, 120-foot flight. This moment in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, changed the world forever and created a new way for humans to take advantage of nice things for their own personal gain. The invention of flight created another facet for America's favorite ideal, capitalism, to take over, creating the ninth wonder of the world, commercial flights. In 2025, flying is a headache, hidden fees, overbooked flights, and rude TSA workers creating a bad environment for passengers across America. It didn't always used to be like this. For the first 70 years of the airplane's life, taking commercial flights was a breeze. In the 1970s, you could walk into an airport, buy a one-way ticket for $20 in cash, ask the front desk worker intimate details about the plane, and then write a fake name on the ticket without personal identification being double-checked. This is what happened on November 24th, 1971, with a man who went by the name Dan Cooper.
He looks a little frightening. He looks like he belongs in the Matrix on that right picture there.
Yeah, you're right. Chapter 1, The Hijacking. Dan Cooper was a white man in his 40s. He was wearing a brown business suit, a black overcoat, and had a white shirt on with a black clip-on tie.
Okay, hottie with a body.
Mm-hmm. What are your opinions on clip-on ties?
Yeah, no, if you can't tie a tie yourself, I'd say there's no shame in it.
Okay. I can't tie a tie. Mackenzie ties my tie for me.
Okay, today you have YouTube, and I feel like you're being lazy if you don't even try.
I am being lazy. In each of his hands, he carried a briefcase and a brown paper bag. Dan boarded flight number 305, a flight from Portland, Oregon, to Seattle, Washington. Sitting in seat 18E, the last row of the plane, while waiting on the tarmac, our boy Dan ordered a bourbon and 7-Up from the flight attendant.
Fire.
Yeah. The flight with all 36 passengers took off at 2:50 p.m. Speaking of flight attendants, let's meet our starting lineup for today's flight crew. Starting off with the pilot flying the metal tube full of drunk people smoking cigarettes was your beautiful captain, Captain William Scott. He's on the left there. Next, sitting next to him in the co-pilot seat was Bill Radizak.
He looks like David Schwimmer.
Yeah.
He's lanky.
Yeah. Coming in now is your flight engineer, Harold Anderson, which is on the right there. And finally, your 3 flight attendants, Alice Hancock, Tina Mucklow, who is in the picture, and Florence Schaffner.
Tina Mucklow.
Yes. Now that we know our players, let's get back to the story. After taking a sip of his 7 and 7, Danny turns around to see Florence Schaffner sitting in the jump seat in the back of the plane. He turns around, hands her a note, and Florence, being a 23-year-old, got notes all the time from middle-aged men trying to save her from her life and, marry her or whatever they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Icon.
So she slipped the note into her purse, forgetting about it. This caught Cooper's attention, making him turn around to say, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb."
Oh.
Which is insanely straightforward.
I mean, you can't really beat around the bush.
I'm pretty sure I have a bomb with me right now.
You're never gonna
believe what's in my briefcase. Florence then opened the note, which read, "Miss, I have a bomb in my briefcase, and I want you to sit by me." Florence obliged, and after sitting next to him, handing him back the note, meaning that the only record of his handwriting was on the plane ticket, which he wrote his name in big block letters. Cooper opened his briefcase, showing Schaffner the red pipes, wires, and battery inside, which is like...
Oh, wow.
Which is like really cartoony. It's almost as cartoony as slipping on a banana peel.
Okay. I'm ready. This camera work is fire. Dude, not the Chevy Equinox. And why was it so slow? You could have taken a picture of a sports car, and instead you decided to get hit by a Chevy Equinox.
I mean, it's the most reliable car out there.
That was
It
really
won those
good.
JD Power awards. Dan Cooper's request: I want $200,000 in unmarked $20 bills. I want 2 back parachutes.
You can do better than that.
I agree. 200 grand to hijack a plane. Like, I would have gone for like, 300-400 grand.
Right.
200 grand back then. So it's worth like $1.5 million now.
Ooh, okay, never mind. He did a good job.
Yeah, but I would ask for hijacking. I want 200 grand and unmarked $20 bills. I want 2 back parachutes and 2 front parachutes. When we land, I want a fuel truck ready to refuel. No funny stuff, or I'll do the job. That's how cool Dan Cooper was.
Do the job.
Schaffner then went to the cockpit to relay that information to the pilots, meaning that the fellow flight attendant, Tina Mucklow, became the new messenger for Cooper's demands. His additional demands included keeping the passengers hostage until the money was brought on board. Captain William Scott, being the hot badass that he is, phoned into SeaTac Airport letting them know that his plane was hijacked, who then informed Seattle police, who then hit up the FBI, who then called the president of the airline company, Donald Nyrock, who then told the chain to comply with the skyjackers' demands. As the flight from Portland to Seattle is only 30 minutes, Captain Scott had to delay landing until the money and parachutes could be gathered and brought to the airport. So, in all his wisdom, decided to stay flying above SeaTac and to keep the passengers calm, told them that the plane was experiencing minor mechanical difficulty. Now, if your pilot told you that the plane was experiencing mechanical difficulties, would you rather be in the sky or the ground?
I'd get my ass out of here.
The police and FBI gathered their ransom money from a local bank. The bills were marked with an L to signify the bills were insured by the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. The front parachutes were acquired from a local skydiving school, which I read the school was closed at the time, and the police had to persuade the owner to sell them the parachutes.
Imagine being like, no, there's like a bomb, and they're like, 150.
I could do 140, but like anything lower than
They're
that.
like, how many people are on the plane?
And the 2 back parachutes came from a local stunt pilot.
A local what pilot?
Stunt pilot?
That's cool.
Yeah. After circling around SeaTac Airport for about 2 hours at 5:24, the plane finally landed. Tina Mucklow retrieved the ransom materials and gave them to Cooper, who then released the passengers and flight attendants Florence Schaffner and Alex Hancock. As they were leaving, Dan was inspecting the money, and Tina was like, "Yo, can I have some of that?"
Ooh.
To which Lieutenant Dan was like, "Sure." And he handed her a stack of bills, to which she replied, "No tipping allowed per company policy."
So she didn't take it?
No, she didn't take it. No tipping allowed. I would have taken it.
Take the stack, baby girl. And then stop working there. What
Exactly. I would have been like, half. Like, give me half.
I mean, he still's got a bomb. She can't really negotiate, but if he's willing to just hand her a stack of cash,
All right.
you gotta take that. That's a friendly thing. I'd argue she's off the clock because she's been running around in space for 2 hours.
Plane started refueling, and Cooper was upset. The money was delivered in a cloth bag instead of a knapsack, like he requested, so he took out his pocket knife, which would put you on the no-fly list today, then cut one of the parachutes open, taking out the canopy and stuffing the money in the bag. He was also upset because the refueling process was taking too long, so much so he said, "Let's get this show on the road."
Wow, this Dan feller's got some cold lines.
He then told the crew that he wanted to go to Mexico City to fly the plane at minimum airspeed to not stall the plane, and to keep an altitude of 10,000 feet. He also requested that the landing gear remain down, for the wing flaps to be lowered 15 degrees, and for the cabin to remain unpressurized.
Oh my gosh, is he like a pilot?
Keep that thought.
Why does he know so much?
Keep that thought. The FBI had that thought too.
Oh yeah, I should be on the FBI.
The pilot explained to him that they wouldn't be able to take it that far with the type of plane that they were on and would need to refuel in Reno, Nevada. Danny agreed, and the plane took off around 7:40 p.m. Chapter 2. The flight to Reno. The Boeing 727-100 started its path towards Nevada with Dan and 4 crew members on board. In the area, 3 fighter jets were doing an unrelated Air National Guard mission and were diverted to follow the plane. What mission were they doing that they could just leave and then take over this hijacking. As the flight took off, Cooper and Mucklow had a back and forth like this. Cooper said, "Lower the staircase for me." Mucklow, not wanting to get sucked out of the airplane, said, "Let me go get a safety rope from the cockpit."
Valid.
Cooper said, "No, I don't want you to go to the cockpit and come back here." And then Mucklow said, "Cut me a strap and I'll use that." Cut it off one of the parachutes. And then Cooper goes, "Fine, I'll do it myself." This interaction lasted about 5 minutes. He then told her to go to the cockpit and not return. She walked up the aisle, turned around at the first class partition, saw Cooper tying the money bag around his waist, and closed the partition, marking the last time anyone had ever seen Dan Cooper.
Oh my God, he just disappeared? Wait, so did he fall out of the plane?
We'll get to it. At 8 p.m., the door ajar light came on, and the crew's ears popped. The hunky Captain William Scott rang the intercom asking Dan if he needed any help. Dan simply replied, "No."
Oh, so he's still alive?
Yeah, he's still here.
I thought you said that was the last
Anyone
time they ever
saw
saw
him.
him. Oh, but he's still alive. Fascinating. Also, why do you keep referring to this pilot as hunky and hot?
I mean, did you see
Because
him?
you've got two pilots to choose from, and you choose arguably the one that looks like Danny DeVito.
I mean, have you seen Danny DeVito? At 8:13, the plane shook around the north suburbs of Portland. Then at 11:05 p.m., the plane landed in Reno, door still ajar, and the entire crew in the cockpit. After landing, FBI agents, state troopers, sheriff's deputies, and Reno police established a perimeter around the aircraft, scared to get on in case of Danny and the bomb still being on board. But our one true hero, Captain Scott, searched the cabin like a grumpy school bus driver and gave the all clear. Chapter 3. The search begins. Immediately, the news broke that someone had just hijacked a plane. Wanting to break this story as soon as possible, a reporter for the Oregon Journal, James Long, broke the news that a D.B. Cooper had just hijacked a plane. This got republished by another journalist, spreading like wildfire, forever changing the name of Dan Cooper to D.B. Cooper.
Why'd he call him DB?
Because he just wanted the story to get out fast, and he just mistyped.
Oh, he mistyped. That's so funny. That's crazy. I love that Jim started a movement. What an icon.
This even caused the FBI to interview a cat burglar whose name was D.B. Cooper, but they quickly determined he was innocent, which a jump from cat burglar to hijacker is crazy. It's almost as big of a jump as when I tried on those new shoes. Hey, what up, guys? Tyler here. Whoa, we are overexposed. Let's fix that. Hey, guys, Tyler here. Today, we are trying out the brand new Croc Super Jumper 3s. I am so excited. I mean, why waste any time? Let's just jump into it. I'm in space.
What on earth was that?
I jumped so high I was in space.
There was no transition into
Okay, it's hard
space.
to find footage of someone going vertically up through the sky.
You're crazy.
I had to scream like that because someone was asleep in the other room.
I would have woken up.
No, you didn't wake up. I recorded that like 10 times. The search for newly named D.B. Cooper was on. Upon entering the plane, the FBI would launch what would become one of the longest and most exhaustive investigation in its history, calling it NORJAC.
Why?
Northwest Hijack.
Oh.
NORJAC. And they took out some land. Large search teams were sent out in the area where it was estimated where old Dan landed. These search teams turned up nothing. No parachutes, no money, no Dan. The search parties were massive. One party that was sent out the next spring consisted of 200 soldiers, Air Force personnel, the National Guard, and civilian volunteers. The search lasted 18 days in March, then another 18 days in April.
Good grief.
Yeah, just for one guy. With the search spanning over 2 counties. A local marine salvage company even used one of their submarines to search the lake in the area. But all of this looking only turned up one skeleton, which was of a teenage girl who had been abducted and murdered a few weeks before.
That's really sad, and I'm glad that they found
And I'm
her.
going to gloss over that.
Okay, so just to recap. DB Cooper, the door was a little open, and she was like, I'm going to get a safety rope to go outside the plane.
So the reason he asked the front desk worker what the intimate details about the plane, he asked if it was a Boeing 727-100. And this is because those airplanes had an aft staircase that would lower, a staircase in the back, right? So he knew that those types of planes were able to lower the staircase mid-flight. So what he did was he lowered the staircase and then jumped with the parachutes. And so the flight attendant wanted to tie herself to the seat in order to not fall out.
Why did he want her to step out?
He didn't.
He just wanted her to help him get out.
Well, and then he said, never mind, I'll do it myself. And she went up to the cockpit and he did it. I should have been more clear. He jumped out of the airplane.
But then the pilot was like, hey, do you need help? And DB said no.
Yeah. And then he jumped. Sorry, I think I mentioned that the plane shook. That was him jumping. The FBI also sent the serial numbers from the bills that were given to Cooper to local financial institutions, casinos, racetracks, businesses with routine transactions involving large amounts of cash, and to law enforcement agencies around the world in an attempt to find any matches. The airline company offered a reward to anyone who found ransom money and reported it, but none of the money was ever recovered. That is until 1980, 9 years later, when 9-year-old Brian Ingham was camping with his family on a beach called Tina Bar. When he was digging a hole for the fire pit in the sand, Brian came across $5,800 of decomposed cash with serial numbers matching Dirty Dan's bills.
Decompose? No! The cash!
Side note, the FBI let him keep $3,000, and in 2008, he auctioned off 15 of the bills for $37,000.
Good grief.
The weird thing about Tina Bar is that it is 12 miles west of where it is speculated Cooper jumped, meaning that it must have been moved there by accident, washed up there somehow, or buried there.
12 miles?
Yeah, so this is the flight path, and that's Tina Bar.
Okay.
So the money traveled 12 miles west. Wow. Yeah. When asked about how the money got to this location, a paleontologist who worked on the case, Tom Kay, said, quote, "We just don't know."
I don't know. Good question for another bitch.
Chapter 4, the evidence. Among things acquired as evidence by the FBI was 66 fingerprints, 2 out of 4 of the parachutes, cigarette butts, his plane ticket, strands of hair, and his now famous clip-on tie with a tie clip.
Dang, they've got everything on them. Sure they found this guy, right?
Let's start with that sexy tie. Look at that thing.
Yeah.
Clip on and all.
Wait, so they found this where? At Tina Bar?
No, this was all on the plane.
Oh. Dropped off his tie. That's fucked up.
Isn't it weird?
Because I was imagining DB Cooper jumping out and that little tie just be...
Yeah, flapping in the wind. And maybe that's why he didn't want to get choked.
By a clip-on tie? That thing couldn't kill anyone if it tried.
I was reading the Wikipedia page about this case, and they mentioned that the FBI, quote, determined the tie had been exclusively sold at JCPenney department stores.
Ooh.
And then I looked at this picture, and the tie literally had pennies on the tag stitched into the back of it. Between this determination and asking the dude named DB Cooper if he hijacked the plane, it gives me low hope for the FBI. It makes you think about the other obvious things they tried. You know, the suspect wore Crocs. Maybe we should, interrogate everybody who's wearing Crocs. Dude, great idea. Are you the hijacker? No. Are you? No. This might take longer than I anticipated. You want to go do some coke?
That was funny. That was good. I loved that.
In 2009, a group of scientists from different backgrounds came together to look for more clues in this case. A part of this group was the aforementioned Tom Kay. This group, called Citizen Sleuths, used 21st technology to test particulates found on the tie. Some of the particles found were unalloyed titanium, bismuth, antimony, aluminum, among other things. These rare earth metals suggested Cooper may have worked for an aeronautical engineering company, a theory Tom Kay promotes as unalloyed titanium was being used by Boeing in the early 70s for their supersonic transport development project. The parachutes were also a huge clue in trying to find the identity of D.B. Cooper. As you may remember, Cooper asked for 4 parachutes, 2 front and 2 back. The 2 back parachutes were what is called emergency bailout parachutes, which are like military chutes where they are incapable of being steered. The 2 front parachutes were more like the parachutes you see Red Bull athletes almost killing themselves with. They get so close, but it's just almost like they have wings or something. So, for the sake of understanding, let's qualify the front Red Bull style chutes as the good ones, and the military can't control styles as the bad ones.
Alan?
When the FBI boarded the plane in Reno, they discovered 2 parachutes left behind. One good, one bad.
Okay.
The good one was cut up, and the bad one was perfectly intact. This means Cooper jumped with 1 good chute and 1 bad chute. However, when gathering supplies for the ransom, the skydiving school sent over a dummy chute marked with a big red X. The point of this parachute was to help trainers in skydiving schools get used to pulling a ripcord without having the canopy fly open. This means the life-saving part of the parachute was sewn in, unable to open. It is speculated that this is the chute that he cut open to stuff the money inside, meaning when he jumped, he was using the bad military-style parachute. A parachute that doesn't open, that's a worse idea than listening to your random teammates.
Okay.
Guys, we need to rush B. They can't even hold it.
Here he comes once again. The first base is a Dren. He's going to hit the ground there as Cole. Oh, what? A jumping double from Cole! What is going on right now? How does he do this? Cole is save luminosity with the all play.
That was for my CS heads.
Okay, 1, there are no CS heads.
Shout out Mike. The form of evidence found were 2 hair samples, one from Dan the Man's arms and the other one from his head. His arm hair was destroyed after it was determined that there wasn't enough DNA on the strand for proper testing, and the hair from his head was stored away until technology got better. But in 2002, when the FBI went to go test the hair again, it turned up missing. Finally, Big D was keeping it cool by smoking some ciggies while hijacking this plane. He smoked 8 Raleigh brand cigarettes over his time on the plane. Like the hair, the butts were stored in a Las Vegas field office until technology was better to extract DNA. In 1998, the FBI requested the butts back, only to discover they'd been destroyed.
Bro, what is going on? I'm starting to think we're never going to find this DB fella.
Well, Chapter 5. Suspects and Theories. In order to pin a suspect, the FBI created a profile of D.B. Cooper. In their profile, they wrote their suspect was probably a military-trained parachutist due to him probably using the military-style chute to jump. They theorized he was in the Air Force due to his intimate knowledge about planes, and was from the Seattle area because he recognized Tacoma as they were circling around SeaTac, and he has knowledge about the distance from SeaTac to a nearby military base.
Okay.
With that description, the FBI interviewed thousands of potential suspects, with the first suspect being Richard McCoy Jr. McCoy was an Army veteran who served...
Not what that knows.
Not what that knows?
Not what that knows. Or those ears. Maybe he did have big ears.
McCoy was an Army veteran who served with the Green Berets as a helicopter pilot. After his military service, McCoy became a recreational skydiver and was also a copycat hijacker. On April 7th, 1972, about 6 months after the Cooper heist, Dick decided to try his hand. After boarding a Boeing 737-100, McCoy brandishes his weapon of choice, a paperweight and an unloaded pistol. He demanded $500,000 and 4 parachutes.
Wow.
He also jumped out of the plane, this time over Utah. He was caught and arrested 2 days later. He was tried and sentenced to over 45 years in prison.
Wow.
2 years later, McCoy broke out of prison and fled to Virginia Beach, which 3 months after he broke out, was killed in a shootout with the FBI.
No! Oh, he really did it all.
McCoy, despite being one of the most popular theories, wasn't D.B. Cooper. Richard McCoy was a Mormon. So there was no way he drank the bourbon and soda and smoked all those darts. McCoy also doesn't match the description given to the FBI. He's too young and his ears are too perky. He was also in Las Vegas at the time of the hijacking. And in Utah... Viva Las Vegas!
That's pretty good. Oh. Billy is frightened.
She didn't like that.
Oh, she hated it.
He was also in Las Vegas at the time of the hijacking and in Utah the day after for Thanksgiving. All three of the flight attendants on board for Cooper's flight also took a look at him and agreed that he's not their guy. Another possible identity for DB Cooper is a man named LD Cooper. In 2011, Lynn Doyle, that's what LD stands for, Lynn Doyle, his niece, Marla, outed her deceased uncle as the man who hijacked the plane on the biggest drinking night of the year in 1971. LD grew up in the area of the skyjacking and was a war veteran. Marla was 8 during Thanksgiving 1971 and recalls her uncle being bloody and bruised. And after asking what happened, Marla was told that LD had just been in a car accident and was told by her other uncle to, quote, shut up and go get your dad. She was 8. Can you imagine that?
That's not nice.
Which is a crazy response to a pretty normal question. After leaving the room, but staying within earshot, Marla heard her uncle say, quote, we did it. Our money problems are over. We've hijacked an airplane. Which reminds me of the last straightforward thing I did.
I don't know. This seems likely. However, I don't believe it. He doesn't look like him, in my opinion. I don't see it. I don't see it in the nose. His face looks too big. He's got a 5 head. No offense. LD.
LD. LD Cooper was also a fan of the comic book hero Dan Cooper.
Okay.
Even having a comic book hanging on his wall.
It was LD.
Dan Cooper is a Canadian comic book written in French and sold in Belgium. So there's like 15 fans of this comic book, and he was one of them. Dan Cooper was about a Canadian test pilot who was known to jump out of airplanes with a parachute. Since they shared a name and occupation, the FBI used people knowing about this niche comic as a part of their profile of Database Cooper, propelling LD to the top of the potential suspects.
I think that's really cool, actually, because, one, it's kind of hard to trace back when you write your name as a very niche superhero. Is he just a regular hero?
I think, yeah, he's like a war.
Comic book character. Also, his eyes are so blue and they're staring into my soul. It is freaking me out. This guy looks like he's got veneers.
Veneers for his eyes?
Well, for his teeth as well. There's a collection of things frightening me. And he's got the small nose. I think it was the real Dan Cooper from the comic books.
You think the comic book Dan Cooper hijacked the plane that day? Mm-hmm. Now that's a theory I can get behind.
I said what I said.
The FBI did test LD's DNA, but found no match with the DNA found on the tie. Our final suspect that we will be talking about is Ted Braden. Braden was a World War II veteran and a master skydiver. He was such a master, in fact, he represented the Army in an international skydiving tournament, which sounds as dangerous as the bleach drinking challenge. Hey, what up guys? Tyler here. Welcome back to the channel. Today I have a brand new challenge for you. It's the Drinking Bleach Challenge. Before I start, I would like to nominate Daniel Keem, Elon Musk, and Jojo Siwa. Alright, let's just get into it. Alright, here we go. First sip. Yeah, it's kind of weird aftertaste.
Hard fall.
Braden was also a part of the Green Berets and served as a military skydiving instructor. Not only did he serve in World War II, but he also served 23 months in Vietnam before defecting and becoming a mercenary in the Congo. After getting caught by the CIA and sent back to the States, Ted became a truck driver in the Washington area. Ted was strapped for cash in the early 70s. He was being investigated by the FBI for stealing $250,000 in a trucking scam. Meaning, he was desperate for money and had low morals. He was described as being, quote, the perfect combination of high intelligence and criminality. Ted also had classified knowledge of how a 727-100 worked, just like DB Cooper, because that was one of the planes used during the Vietnam War. In my opinion, he kind of looks like DB Cooper, with a similar build and around the same height. If anyone is DB Cooper, I believe it's this guy. But I don't actually think Ted Braden is our guy, because I think Dan Cooper is dead. In fact, I don't think Dan Cooper survived past 8:14 p.m. on November 24th, 1971. In my opinion, Dan Cooper didn't survive the jump, and the odds were stacked against him. When he jumped, the wind was whipping at his face at 172 miles per hour. Not only that, it was raining hard, and the temperature was 15 degrees. With full cloud cover, plus a crescent moon, it would have been pitch black. This would make landing difficult. He was also wearing loafers and a trench coat, which I heard was plan B for Felix Baumgartner if his spacesuit didn't fit. Next, Cooper didn't have an accomplice to pick him up after the jump. He let the pilots choose the flight path, so he wouldn't have been able to let an accomplice know what path he was taking. Finally, none of the money was ever spent. This is evident by a recovered portion of money found on Tina Bar.
Wow.
I've always had the opinion that Cooper died on impact, after failing to open his parachute because no evidence of his dead body had been found. I think he could have landed in a soft spot in the dirt or mud, burying him and his materials instantly.
Fascinating.
Rule 34 of the internet states that if it exists, there's porn of it. This is because, by nature, humans are flawed and depraved. We take nice things and ruin it for everyone else. 68 years after the invention of the airplane, a man took something nice like speedy air travel and through selfishness and greed created a problem for the rest of us. Maybe if it weren't for Dan Cooper, we would still be able to take our 4-ounce bottles of Walmart branded sunscreen on a plane. Oh wait.